Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha with Ice Cream Fitness here. And once again, it is time for the Gear Talk with Jason Q&A. But hold on, let me give you guys a bicep shot first. And let's get right into these questions. First question, does Adex hinder gains? Yeah, as a general rule, aromatase inhibitors are going to potentially hinder your gains. All of them, other than aromasin, have been shown to reduce IGF-1 production, which means you're going to get a little less gains out of any gear that you're using. And so accordingly, you need to use them as needed. You don't just go in and throw a bunch of Adex or another aromatase inhibitor into your stack for no reason. Some guys will say, well, I just do it to prevent gyno, and my question becomes, well, do you even know if you're gyno prone? There are people who can use 2 grams of testosterone a week and will never get gyno without using any ancillaries. There are other guys who will get it off of a single amp of testosterone a week, like 200, 250 milligrams, they will get gyno every time they use it within 2 weeks. So if you don't know where you sit in there, it's really silly to spend the money, hinder your gains, mess up your cholesterol further and things like that without knowing if you actually need it. And it's the same with controlling bloat. You get into the question of, if you're that worried about bloat, you have to go, okay, are you bulking or are you cutting? And is there a reason you're worried about the bloat? Is it that important to you to keep your bloat that in check that you need to use a bunch of Adex? Rather than figuring out how much you need to keep your estrogen levels in the proper range. And this is, again, a case of if you're really serious about your gear use, you're going to get blood work done and things, and you're going to get an idea of how much Adex and ancillaries you need to control side effects and to keep you in the proper range so that you can make the most out of your gains, out of your gear. But I mean, for people on a budget, okay, just by default they might use a low amount and use really cheap gear. But again, if you're on that tight of a budget, you might want to reevaluate what your actual goals are, why you're actually juicing, what you're training for, etc. Alright, next question. Your opinion on self-medicated TRT when docs won't prescribe. Is Sustanon 250 good for TRT, and how often to inject? Alright, let me say up front, I think Sustanon has been so massively overrated that it's just ridiculous. The only benefit to Sustanon is the fact that it's got prop in it, so you can front load a blast or a cycle easier because it has a fast-acting ester mixed with a short-acting ester. You would be better off, and it's more cost effective to just go on a long ester, or if you want to front load with it, or front load with orals. But Sustanon itself, it's massively overrated. And that's my opinion. Now, as far as the self-medicating, I would say if you live in a country like the US to where it's a felony to possess gear, I would say your best option is to see another endocrinologist. If your levels are coming back in the low range and you know that you qualify and the doctor doesn't prescribe, go see another endo. Don't let them give you the patches or the gels or any of that nonsense. Make them give you a depot. Make sure they write your prescription for a once-a-week injection instead of every 2 weeks, because 90% of people who get the every 2-week thing complain about the crashes. They complain about their mood, their energy, their sex drive dropping before they get to their every 2-week injection. So once a week, and always get a second opinion before you self-medicate, because it's so much better if you can just get the prescription and have it, because it saves you a lot of legal hassle potentially. Now, and if you are going to do it, then the best thing to do is, obviously you're going to want somewhere between 100 and 150 milligrams, and you're going to want to just go get private blood work done. You're going to want to keep an eye on your estrogen levels, which will be your E2 levels, and you're going to really want to keep an eye on your hemocrite levels, which is your red blood cell count. And that's going to be your biggest concerns as far as your overall health from doing it. Alright, next question. Why are enhancements injected in the glutes, and is it the only place where you can inject? I hope you're referring specifically to anabolic steroids, because most other performance enhancing injected drugs are actually done subcutaneously. Things like all of your peptides, your IGF-1, growth hormone, insulin, anything like that is not done intramuscularly at all. Now, anabolics are done intramuscularly, but That is because that's the way they're done. They're oil-based injectables, and they're meant to last a long time. They don't just get into your system and get out in 12 hours or 24 hours. And the reason the glutes are so like this is because they're the largest muscle. Now, people inject in all sorts of places. They do delts, biceps, triceps, pecs, quads, glutes. But generally, the larger the muscle, and there's plenty of research on this specifically for anabolics as well as any other intramuscular injection used medically, you get a lot more of it into the bloodstream, total amount into the bloodstream, and you get it in faster if you put it into the largest muscle groups possible. So the bigger the muscle, the more efficient your use of it. And glutes are the largest muscle in the body. And then quads are obviously going to be your second choice. But yeah, people rotate around and they do different things. But they are done in the glutes because you get the most bang for your buck that way. And it's a muscle that's going to be less prone to soreness and things from it after the fact. All right, next question. What's your opinion on using Clen without T3 or AAS? A lot of people do it. I don't really understand their logic because obviously if you take Clen, you're not natural. You are no more natural than Ronnie Coleman or Jay Cutler at that point. So if you're doing it just to hold on to your natural status, that's absurd. It's a drug. It's illegal to possess in many countries. In the U.S., you could go to prison for it. So it's just as illegal, well, other than some research chemicals, so that gets tricky and complicated. It's completely banned in sports, and again, it's clearly not a supplement, it is a drug. If you want to use a drug that is banned in sports for being a performance-enhancing substance, you are chemically enhanced. So if that's your reason, it's silly. And the other thing is, it comes down to, why would you use it without the others when the others are safer? And I feel 100% confident in saying this, that as far as risk to your health or risks of an early death, Clen is considerably more dangerous than anabolic steroids and T3 both. It's more dangerous of a compound, hands down. And so in terms of just health risk, people who are willing to use the more dangerous substance, but not the safer ones, to get better results really seems kind of silly to me. And it's the same with the Clen and the T3. T3 has a synergistic effect with Clen. You don't get as much out of Clen if you don't use T3. It actually, they enhance the effects of each other, and I've explained this before in detail in other videos, but there's a synergy between the two. Your Clen will burn fat faster through its beta receptor activity if you have elevated T3 levels. And the elevated T3 levels will replenish the receptors for it more quickly. So I think it's silly to use Clen without T3. T3 without Clen is okay, but if you're going to use Clen, you should probably be on T3. And if you're using either one, you should probably be on anabolics to help preserve muscle tissue, because they are both catabolic to muscle tissue to some extent. And people will argue on the Clen, oh, that it's anti-catabolic. No, there's no evidence of that. And if anything, I've seen guys lose muscle on Clen because it creates a caloric deficit. It speeds up metabolism. It lets you eat more food while you're still cutting. All right, last question. Running gear to reach personal goals. I don't understand why you feel gear is only for pro bodybuilding or pro athlete. What's wrong with someone having personal goals that are higher than they can achieve natty? This is kind of a straw man argument, because I've never said that it's only for pro athletes. I've absolutely never said that. What I've said is that it's for people who are very dedicated, who have very serious goals, who are willing to make a lifetime commitment, because I don't see gear use as something that you quit because you're not going to necessarily keep what you got out of it unless you use it for years on end. And an example, you take a guy like Big J, who's a pro bodybuilder. He pushed way beyond his natural limits and stayed there for years and years and years. And then he came off, and now he is bigger than any natural in the world. I promise you right now, 10 years clean, he has more muscle mass than any true natural anywhere in the world. I promise you that. If they're anywhere near his size, they're not natural. But he was able to maintain that because he changed his set points for years on end. But for anybody else that's cycling on and off nonsense, you're not going to keep what you gain. So it's really kind of a very serious commitment. So yes, obviously, serious competitive athletes and serious competitive bodybuilders are going to be those who are going to be the frontline users of this stuff. And then behind that, when I say recreational users, I'm talking about people who are not seriously dedicated. I mean, if you've decided for whatever reason and you have seriously assessed your goals, and it is extremely important to your life to get a 450-pound bench press, or to have a lean 19-inch arm, or some similar extreme goal, and it is a driving goal in your life, and you've researched the stuff, then by all means do so. It's the recreational users who don't research it, who want to use it as a shortcut instead of saying, well, I know that my goals cannot be attained natural, and I'm willing to put in the work and use the stuff to get there. That's actually fine with me if they're dedicated and they understand the level of commitment, they research it, and they train hard to reach otherwise unobtainable goals. That's perfectly acceptable with me. It's this guy who goes, I want 16-inch arms and a 315 bench, YOLO, and they go shoot a gram of tren a week. So understand the difference of what I'm talking about there. Alright guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you next time.